The new IP gold rush, how AI is redrawing every IP landscape. Hello and welcome back to Invent Anything with John Cronin. We're going to explore how AI is reinventing the entire world of IP landscapes, from mapping unseen patent white spaces, decoding your competitors' hidden moves, to spotting where invention might next happen, how to avoid AI's ability to draft patents. We're going to talk about how it impacts IP in the business. And also, we're going to peer into the future, how AGI, that's a general intelligence, is going to write, defend, and even monetize patents.
Inventions keep the world spinning. From fire in the wheel to today's high tech, inventions power change. Turn your inventions into reality. Learn how to get your ideas to market. This is Invent Anything with John Cronin.
So the topics today are going to be the new AI patent landscape capabilities, and I'll talk a little bit about the history, especially my involvement in the very nature of the term IP landscape. Then we're going to talk about how the AI affect these IP landscapes is going to really help us with competitors in a way you would not even imagine. We're then going to move to topic number 3, which is mapping opportunities, how to detect areas to invent in. Very powerful technologies coming on this. And topic number 4, we're going to talk about how AI can be used for patent efforts, but I want to talk about specifically the caveats I'm seeing every single day in the market about others using AI for IP without really knowing much about IP. Then we'll move to topic 5, which is how the IP landscapes are getting interconnected to other tools and processes. So how AI IP landscapes are being connected to business processes, to R&D processes, to marketing process, etc. And then we'll end up with the future of the AI IP landscape technologies. You know, when I do these podcasts, I think about the audiences. And for this podcast, I think certainly for CEOs who want to learn how to steer R&D, that would be one. For founders who are kind of looking on how to get more white space understanding, certainly that's for them. For investors, they can now insist on information, how to do like claim to revenue mapping and free to operate and all those things. They can now really require that of their companies because the technology is right there and very inexpensive. Even IP counsel could be an audience for this because they're dealing with all this stuff. They're interested in working with their clients on continuing patents and they need some strategic input to that. So there's all sorts of things that they could use these competitive IP landscapes for based on AI. My friends and inventors and engineers, they can also use this to translate product ideas directly into new patents, but using the IP landscape's white space to show them where it is first. And even for marketing people, where they want to use improvements in marketing, talking about IP backing the product or service direction of the company, they can quickly use these AI IP landscapes for helping them with marketing. So coming up, the first 2 topics are how to unlock the new AI IP landscape explosion, to see white spaces, opportunities, to see things that you were blinded to see before, until AI shows you really where to go. And then stay tuned because after that, we're going to talk about how to explore competitors beyond your imagination of what's possible to understand what the competitors are doing. You'll be able to see rival strategies before they do. You'll be able to use AI signals for inventor migration. Where are those guys headed? You can see how the claim types are shifting. You can see tools like citation indexes being real predictions of where things are headed. And this all allows you to outmaneuver and win in the IP game. So stay tuned. So let's talk about topic number 1, the new AI patent landscape capability. I decided to do this podcast because my firm, IP Capital, does a lot of IP landscapes. We do 2 or 3 of them a month, and we have been doing that for about 27, 28 years now. As a matter of fact, the term IP landscape is something that my firm, IP Capital, trademarked when I first started. When I first started in 1998, 97, even an IP consultant wasn't well known what that was. I think I might have been the first, if not one of the first IP consultants. Over time, I started to develop how you could look at IP in a more formal way by drawing some maps or charts or graphs A lot of that I learned at IBM in patent mapping, but the IP landscapes had more business value versus just product mapping of patents. So IP Capital invented the term IP landscape. That's how far we go back. And I'm now seeing where it's headed, and that was the reason for this podcast. There's now incredible possibilities opening up every single day by applying agentic AI to the patent system, patent data, knowing as an IP strategist what to do. So there's a huge change in these IP landscapes. And there are companies you could buy a seat to view the patents, so you can use Google Patents or Lens or all these other technologies. But it turns out, without being an expert on understanding patents, these tools are hard to use. And even these companies are building a lot of capability, AI capability, that still is really far away from the average user. So what we've started to find is that when we add AI to the IP landscapes, because we're experts at IP strategy with about 50 different services that we do, we're able to really start to comprehend how to add more value, but even more importantly, the surprises that we're learning every day. So let me just go through kind of some of the stuff about some of the capability. So first is if I take a look, we were finding you can get new AI-based landscape insights. You can literally have the AI basically find a particular company or a particular sector, plot out the patents, and ask it to provide insights based upon the IP it just read. That before used to take consultants a lot of time, or the untrained people would do it mostly incorrectly. So just imagine you're a CEO of a medical device company and you have an IP landscape, but you add an AI to it, and you're dealing with sort of oncology devices. The AI reads the thousands of patents, and it basically talks about that there's a new white space opportunity to develop inventions in oncology for quality of life. I mean, how long would that have taken you to come up with? So the AI reads all these patents and comes up with this stuff. Another thing is that a lot of times bucketing of patents into technology categories or business categories is a good way of looking at IP landscapes. But now, in fact, we're finding that AI can actually find the new technology buckets. And I remember many times when I've worked with clients where by reading patents, I discovered certain categories weren't shown in the IP landscape. I remember working for Boston Scientific, and they were interested in endoscopes. And by reading hundreds of patents, I recognized that robotic endoscopes wasn't a category, but seemed to have patents filed in that space recently. Later on, that became a main driver. So this AI now provides huge ability to find tech sectors. Another thing about the AI-based patent landscape is it's really now really cool understanding prior art. So we can use AI for better sort of claim comparison to your inventions so that you can determine whether or not there's really good prior art or not. And this allows for new filing decisions. An example is that the AI could do an exhaustive prior art search and really in seconds help you differentiate the claims that you want to get versus the prior art and give you a direction. You couldn't do that before. And this is getting even better and better. So AI landscaping for prior art, for claim drafting is certainly a new direction. Another thing is there's all these weird things that are coming up. The AI patent landscape could, for instance, do regional analysis. For instance, it could be looking at a series of patents in a landscape, say you're in a sector like automotive batteries or something, and then you'd be looking at who's filing and trends and how many, etc. Maybe by sub-technology categories, things like materials and connectors and things like that. But then all of a sudden you find out that there's a lot of AI technology being done, and then some country announced that it wants, to provide a break to any companies that are developing patents in AI for, say, energy. So China might have a new regional law or something, and then all of a sudden that insight could be added to the information saying there's a trend in China for these particular types of patents because there's new motivations by the regional governments to essentially push this direction, or the law has changed. A lot of times you see trends, you don't understand them. We find that the AI-based IP landscapes can actually go into understanding what's going on with the patent offices and the countries and the markets and adding that to the insights of growth of patents. Another thing is that you can have sort of generative AI models, basically allowing you to understand even better than anybody else what's going on in an IP landscape. And by generative AI, I mean that you could literally put a corpus of information, like you could put your website in, you could put hundreds of areas of papers that you're interested in, and use that as a corpus to search the patent literature and say, from this patent literature search, tell me the results based upon this corpus of information. So it adds new value to you, leveraging the results of an IP landscape. So your data sets, your unique corpuses of data sets become quite valuable in IP landscaping. And not understanding that means you're going to leave a lot on the table. Another thing is that these AI IP landscapes allow you to use corpus of data from the corporation, which gives you all sorts of strategic insight. So you can have, for instance, a company sets up as the top 10 IP competitors, and all of a sudden you're using that corpus of information that these are your top competitors. The AI IP landscape is done on a certain set of search terms, and it produces some charts and graphs for you, and it notifies you that, from your data of your top 10 competitors, there are two new competitors that you didn't even know of. And it decided to show you those two of the 10 instead of showing you the top 10 because it wanted you to see that these two new rivals were coming into your sector. So AI is starting to make business decisions about what it's going to put as categories in the landscape categories. It's really kind of crazy thinking about that kind of capability because that's the sort of stuff that you would have found out years later, not in seconds. Another thing is that you could just use the AI in an IP landscape to type in a point of view. You could say, looking at these patents, I'm a startup and I've just got funded, and my direction is to get products out really quickly. And I want you to use that kind of basis when you search the patents. Tell me, given what I'm interested in, what the IP landscape tells me. And so it comes back with insights with that point of view thinking. And it tells you, hey, for these kinds of patents being filed by large companies, don't worry. But for these companies filed by startup companies like yours, they become your main competitors. So these are the patents to focus on. And here's my insights based upon those. All of that is done, and it produces charts based upon that. Without you doing all the analysis, going through all the meetings, etc., with people to have people then start to ask, what do we do about this information? Another thing about the AI IP landscape is that you can now draft claims based upon, quick searches of an IP landscape. So your rival drafts some broad claims. All of a sudden, the AI landscape shows you that LLMs are being used in the claim language, and you now are sort of shocked that you didn't recognize this. So it immediately tips you off that you should start adding this to the claim area. And this is just another example of a tool inside of an AI-based IP landscape. Another thing is that there's a lot of policy issues with the patent offices, and the USPTO has this whole era of AI inventorship evolving. I was just reading an article this morning about, maybe they're going to revisit the role of AI helping you invent. So maybe there's an AI algorithm inside the IP landscape that allows you to create a risk factor associated with some of the patents in the analysis that may be more risky to being invalidated. And finally, imagine being an investor and you put in, I'm an investor, I'm interested in these types of things with my companies that I'm investing in. And by doing an AI-based IP landscape, that point of view comes out. So all of a sudden, there's a claims mapping to market directions and monetization based on the investor point of view. I could literally spend the next 2 or 3 hours just giving you these kinds of examples. But I want to kind of move on to topic number two to talk about understanding competitors, because the specific idea of an IP landscape gives you market direction, product direction, etc. But a big use of IP landscapes are competitors. So let's go into that. Understanding competitors beyond your imagination. And I use that kind of tagline, beyond the imagination, because truly what we're finding on a daily basis is we're learning things that we could have never have learned doing an IP landscape. So just imagine strategy, for instance. You could track how many continuations are filed, which can predict the intent of the strategy. So if some companies are producing lots of continuations and others aren't, that tells you that some companies are investing in derivative inventions on what they filed and some aren't, which may mean that they have more sentinel inventions than another competitor. So literally by asking the AI IP landscape output to think about continuations as a strategic insight, it automatically does this. It automatically shows you charts and graphs and calculations about what's going on with continuations. You couldn't do that before, even with the best AI-based patent mapping tools. A second thing is you could look at inventor migration. You can basically say, here's a cluster of inventors, but I want to see the impact of inventors on the IP landscape. And it comes back and says, hey, here's a cluster of three big company inventors that were on a lot of patents, and now their name shows up in startups. And one of those startups is a rival to you. So all of a sudden, that rival becomes much more dangerous because big company inventors basically understand value of patents a lot of times for the big companies. So all of a sudden, you get tipped off by an IP landscape because you were smart enough to ask about inventor clusters and how they're moving. By the way, we're going to get to the future where you don't even have to think about that. It's going to think about that with general intelligence. The third area beyond the imagination is claim type changing. You could literally, and we used to do this at IP Capital. It took a lot of work to write VBA scripts inside of the databases to find this kind of information. Today, we don't have to do that. But what we can do is say, here's the IP landscape, here are the 10 categories, and here's how they're evolving. Give me some insights. But then ask the question, what about the claim types of those patents? And all of a sudden it comes up that says, look, all these claim types are systems and apparatuses and compositions of matter. But all of a sudden, in the last year and a half, two out of the 10 competitors are filing functional claims. And those functional claims are basically providing really broad capture of the function of the invention. Or maybe there are business method claims, which then highlights you that some of your competitors are now thinking their business methods are more innovative than their products or their service or their compositions or their apparatuses. All that because you asked the AI IP landscape to tell you about how claims are changing just by asking that. In order to have done that a year ago would have taken a huge amount of money to analyze it. Another thing is beyond the imagination is that you can use citations in a very different way. When I first started my company with the IP landscapes, basically I bought a company called Mapit, which had a hyperbolic citation tree, and we actually sold it as a piece of software to some of our clients. And so it would map out like one patent was, cited by these two, and one of those patents was cited by another three, and you could get this visualization map of the interrelationship between all the patents through citations. Well, now, for instance, the AI IP landscape can do this automatically, and they can really kind of plot out citations by rivals to show you that all of a sudden some of your top rivals are now filing in the UK, and that's information you would have never known, and you wouldn't even know how to articulate that question. So you can use predictions of citations to determine what the next technology areas are going to be, or even what countries are going to be important. Another thing beyond imagination is obviously in almost every IP landscape, you're seeing who the new companies are, new assignees. But now it can show you new assignments of companies that may have products. So you can really ask the AI, show me the new assignees, but only show me the ones that have real products out there. So the AI goes out and searches to see if these companies have new product announcements and then weights those in terms of the IP landscape results to show you which companies have products. So now just a question, you're mapping the patent AI landscape to reality. Another thing is this patent analysis prosecution speed. You could take a look at, the AI giving you output of an IP landscape and ask the question, how many of these patents are getting through? What's the rate by which they're being accepted? But also you could say, are there any companies here that seem to have a faster acceptance rate? Well, some companies actually pay for speed by using the fast tracking. That would pop up. But some companies, claims are getting through really quickly. I have one client that filed 7 patents, and in 4 or 5 months, they all got issued. Why? Because these patent claims were so different than everybody else's. Wouldn't you like to know about prosecution speed to really see about novelty and direction? Because the examiners have no dog in the fight. So if things happen faster, that's really good, and you should know it. The same thing, true abandonment rates. So certain patents being abandoned, not issued. And so you can use the exact same idea to figure out which technologies are sort of drying up faster because companies don't want to spend money on the patents. Another area for the imagination for competitors is that you can kind of the AI can do the patents of rival and find connection stories. A long time ago, I saw a connection series by the BBC by James Burke called The Day the Universe Changed. And he talked about the connection between everything from a champagne bottle to the space shuttle and how they were connected through invention. Now you can do that. Now you can say, for these group of 500 patents separating by companies, and then give me the connections between them in terms of problems and solutions and problems and solutions, and really lay out the history of what's going on and turn it into a short story for me. That can be done instantly now. It's really beyond the imagination. Another part of the patent system is the pair, which is the patent application information retrieval system. So this is the data behind the patents. It's all the documents that have to do with the examiner and the attorneys going back and forth through office actions. You can now ask the AI to go through that to essentially give you some information. For instance, tell me about all the claims of my rival number, my top rival here, and tell me the kinds of claim drafting they're changing in order to get the patents through. So you find out all of a sudden they're changing some of the language in their claims to get the patents through, and all of a sudden you recognize that what was getting through novelty is a different level of the process that you didn't know, and so you're able to now find that out. And then finally, another thing beyond the imagination is that you can do paper patent analysis. A lot of patents don't have real data associated with it. Wouldn't it be great to have an AI landscape output to say, yeah, show me the forward patents, but show me the backward patents, meaning the forward patents are projecting about where invention is going to go. The backwards patents are really saying, I'm filing what my product is. Wouldn't it be great to have that information? All that's available. Once again, I could spend 2 or 3 hours just talking about the competitor side of the AI IP landscape. But let's move on. Talk about topic number 3 and topic number 4, what's coming up. We're going to use and change our point of view about opportunity mapping to show you where we can see heat maps of white spaces and citations and universities and startups and all those places that you could invent in. But we also want to talk about caveats. And I really want to spend a few minutes on this because as a practitioner of IP at IP Capital with over 50 services, dealing with 20, 30 companies a month, maybe 3 or 4 times that for just business meetings, we are being inundated by those people that are giving us information because they happen to type into ChatGPT and they're sending to us to analyze. And it's really causing a firestorm of back and forths and we're really learning a lot about what you should and shouldn't use for AI, for LLM, for IP, unless you're being an expert. So stay tuned. So let's get into it. Topic number 3, opportunity mapping. And this is really about how to detect areas to invent. So the first thing is that the AI can produce kind of a density private eye. It can kind of show you the volume of how AI is being followed. But sometimes just the density of the landscape is not as valuable as finding some percentage of a type of patent in the landscape. So for instance, you could say, okay, here is the landscape of all the companies that I'm evaluating. Maybe it's 550 patents, but show me some differences about, even though there's a lot of patents in the space that might tell me that I shouldn't be going there because there's a lot of competition. Within the density, is there anything going on that people are not filing? And it comes back and it says, yep, basically everybody's filing about the same sort of things, and there's a lot of density, therefore there's not a lot of white space. But there are some places, some patents, some inventors are dealing with, say, functional level claims. That is, the claiming the function of the result instead of the apparatus itself, or a business method, as I mentioned before. So, so all of a sudden, within a dense area, you're finding some opportunities that you wouldn't have found before. Another thing is that there's sort of AI backward citations. You can use citation trees sort of backwards to find innovation sectors. So, for example, maybe a backward citation tree shows it has 3 legs out of the 10 that are backed by universities. So you trace backwards and you find that three of the areas out of the 10 have universities to start with. Interestingly enough, by tracing that back and having the AI focus that as a difference, you now can engage those 3 universities maybe to do some contract work for you. We have found always that a lot of breakthroughs have a signature with someone in the trail of patents came from universities because it was pure research. So you can get that now just with the prompt of the IP landscape. Another area for opportunity mapping is sort of, I'll call it top inventor boost, if you will. So there are a lot of companies that have lots of inventors. Some inventors have lots of patents, and having a lot of patents makes you kind of a very sophisticated inventor. I know many folks that I talk to, very few have over 20, 30 patents. Some have hundreds, some have even thousands. But you start to talk to these prolific inventors, and they think about patents in a very different way. So you find your opportunity mapping that some of your rivals, 2 out of your 10 maybe, have some really strong inventors. And so this tells you that maybe one of your rivals basically just hired a new inventor who has lots of patents to their name. And this may be a reportable event to the product manager, R&D guys, or even the board. So remember, inventors are the ones that create the inventions. Another opportunity area is looking at domains where, you kind of have like suppose you have a checklist of things you're kind of looking at, but all of a sudden you find out that some of the patterns have a very different kind of map that maybe there's an overlay of a brand new technology in the mix of the patents. So all of a sudden, one group of patents is starting to talk about using a sort of AI controller of sensors on the process and you hadn't seen that before. So all of a sudden you're alerted that this kind of technology is coming into your domain. Another area is enablement. Uh, One of the great things about patents is they have to be enabled in order to be issued. So if you look at the claims, you go back to the spec, the enablement in the specification tells you whether, it's operable. And in order to get through the patent office, it has to be, quote, enabled. Well, we have found there's various levels of enablement. So you can actually reverse engineer that enablement for all sorts of wonderful stuff. I could do a podcast just on this. But supposing you do an enablement study and you find out that your rivals are putting tool parameters to provide insight for enablement, tool parameters, but they're actually not putting process steps in their patents as enablement. So all of a sudden you sort of recognize that maybe there's a white space for you to invent process steps because they're not enabling those process steps, just some sort of tool parameters. So now you have the ability maybe getting patents in the process steps. So you can mine the patent literature for all sorts of enablement types or enablement things going on. Sometimes it's just, oh my goodness, you read the claim, they get the claim, but the way they did it, in the enablement was very, very different. They're using a new type of sensor to measure something that didn't even think was possible. So studying enablement of patents just by asking the AI-based landscape is really kind of amazing. Another opportunity is like AI heat maps, where you look at invention heat maps. IP Capital has a process where we take technology, say 10 technologies, and we map them across the same technologies. So just imagine a 10 by 10 matrix or 20 by 20 matrix. The intersection is where we put a patent. So a lot of patents have an intersection between two technologies, but there are many times where you find out in a very dense cluster that there's a cross of technology, say technology 3 with technology 7, which has nothing in it. So to sort of give an example, maybe you have an aspirator where have fragrances and so on, and you find in the heat map that the aspirator shape is one of the technology categories, and pressure control is another part of the patent literature. And so a lot of patents in pressure control, a lot of patents in say aspirator shape orifices, but all of a sudden you find out there's no patents in the combination of shape of the orifice's shape versus the pressure control. So you start to think, my goodness, maybe I could build a relationship between those two and take advantage of that and build a great aspirator. And that's all because of the opportunity mapping of being able to map the heat maps of technology. AI, there's also, say, AI rejection analysis. So you can go through the pair once again and find out what the examiner is rejecting. So your rivals put multiple patents in and they're being rejected on 103, and they find out one reference is being commonly used to reject them. That then says that one reference should be used by you when you're filing patents in the space because you know the examiner is going to file it. Hey, by the way, examiners are people, and they deal usually with sectors of technology, and they know what seminal patents are, and they keep them in their drawer. In other words, they're always using the same patents for the same, 103 rejections. So you could actually know that before you wrote up your next patent. If you're a patent attorney, you know what I'm talking about. If you're an inventor, you're going, that's interesting. If you're an IP strategist, you say that's a real kind of cool thing to do. There's also sort of for opportunity mapping, sort of ideation participation. You literally can have a brainstorming session and use the AI IP landscape sitting right there on the laptop, which you can project, to ask instantly any questions. So in a 90-minute session, the IP landscape becomes, a contributor. So AI becomes a contributor in your ideation session because you can ask it any questions you want. Another opportunity area is reverse engineering of rivals, provisionals. So you can use AI, for instance, look at your provisionals and look at your rivals, find out which of them are filing provisionals and which aren't. And then you could find out within that time frame if they're filing, they're issuing, how many relied on the provisional. And then you can actually have the AI read the provisional to find out if it really does cover the claims of the new patents. And that then shows the connection between how good their provisionals were versus how good their filings are. And then some rivals will be really good at it, some won't. Therefore, the rivals that have provisionals that aren't that good at it, you will know. And that gives you an idea of quality and risk. And finally, there are kind of AI-based competitor watch lists. The average watch list used to be did my competitor, my rival, file a patent? And when it does, notify me. Not today. Not only was it going to do is it's going to notify you, it's going to do a whole bunch of analysis saying, yep, there's a new patent. We just looked at it. In the cluster, it's a new business model. Should be concerned about that. It relies upon the provisional, and it's really solid. You should be worried about that. The enablement's pretty solid. You should be worried about that. But there's no product coming from the company, so don't worry about that. And so the AI is doing all that. So your alert is not just an alert. It's like you have five private eyes on the ground. Half of them are Republicans, half of them are Democrats, the third of them are independents. So you're actually getting a point of view that's kind of reasonable. You're getting all three sides at once, whatever. Politics aside, AI is changing our world. So let me talk about the fourth area about caveats. And I may be talking really quickly here. This is a topic that, I discuss with my staff constantly. I invented down early on, as I mentioned, the IP landscape because my clients wanted an easy way to look at patents. And today I'm seeing the evolution of this IP landscape going on steroids with AI, and it's just getting started. But here are some of the caveats. Now, I'm talking about the caveats here, about the AI IP landscape, because I'm kind of making the idea that if you're using a chat GPT or Claude or Grok, I mean, I love them. I just bought a Cybertruck and I have Grok loaded in my Cybertruck. So when I drive around, I bring up Grok and I'm running around talking to Grok in my Cybertruck inventing. What could be better than that? Nothing. Okay. But anyway, I use AI and I have many AIs that I use constantly every day. So they become part of my world. Pretty scary. But there's a lot of caveats because if you happen to use these things, you listen to this podcast, a lot of people are saying, I wonder if my idea is patentable. And then they get in the ChatGPT and they give it like, a sentence. Is this paper cup with this new plastic wax, that can change colors based on heat? Is that patentable? And then I get the email, which is an eight-page document. John, could you take a look at this and tell me, should I file it or not? I'm like, I'm reading 8 pages. They spent 2 minutes. And all of a sudden I recognize maybe I should use AI on the 8 pages because I can give it prompts that I know. Is it enabled? Does this thing exist? Is the claim any good? Prior art. So I answer them with my AI. Then they answer my AI with their AI. The next thing you know, I should just get out of the way and just let AIs talk to each other, right? So there's something going on here, and I want to point out some caveats. So one caveat is, for instance, using most of these LLM tools that create results based on prompts. If you're an expert in a field, give it some prompts that you know and look at the output. You're going to say that's wrong. It hallucinates. So what makes you think it's going to be any better when you ask it a patent question? These things hallucinate. Okay, so that's like a first level error. The second thing about it is, as a caveat, these large language model prompts for patents are written by users who are untrained. So there's a second level error here, meaning when I said write me a patent for an idea, like it leads to huge variability in enablement. And there's no connection to claims, no connection to prior art or anything. So you're literally asking it to tell you about something that you don't know that much about. So not only does it hallucinate, but you don't know it's hallucinating. And it actually doesn't use the patent system to tell you about patents. It actually makes up patents. So unless you have an AI that's connected to the patent system, you're going to get very poor results. Most of them aren't. Perplexity just announced a connection to the patent literature, not just doing a general search on patents and finding token responses to that. But even that, a recent podcast by Seth Cronin would show that when he looked at how good a Perplexity AI is with patents versus well-known research tools with AI in them, the results are totally different. So that's a second level error. But there's a third level error. Few of these LLMs today have any understanding really of patents. All they get is the knowledge from the web or from all the content that it's been trained on. So there's a level 3 error, which is if you ask something like, tell me if my patent violates this idea. Well, that makes no sense because patents can't violate anything. Patents only stop others from making, using, or selling. They can't violate anything. So you can ask it a question and it'll give you the answer. But the question is improper by itself, and the AI won't tell you that. So it's a class 3 error. Now, I could go on this, but let me just give you some others. This is kind of fun. The AI output appears excellent to an untrained user. So if you don't know about IP, and I have a lot of discussions about this, if you don't know about IP, but you use the engines to tell you about results for IP, you are really going in the wrong direction because you could make all sorts of business decisions that, and by the way, these IPs are what they're called, the AIs today are called sycophants. It's the sycophant stage of AI, meaning AI always tells you how great you are. And at the end of your prompt result, it says, and it suggests, would you like me to do this? And would you like me to do that? And then it does. And it gets deeper into that hole. That's called a sycophant. The next versions of AI are not going to be like that. And the third versions of AI, if you follow AI 2027, are not actually going to like humans, and they're actually going to lie a lot. Now, this may sound, like a crazy idea, but if you look up AI 2027, you'll actually recognize that some of the experts in the world are all worried about the third version of AI and even the fourth version of AI. We're in the first version now. But I see it every day. AI hallucinates. My clients are sending me stuff, and then I have to deal with it. So I just want you to consider when we talk about AI IP landscapes that if it's done by professionals correct, it's enormously cool, but it can be really taken the wrong direction without you understand the caveats. Another caveat is AI can not only hallucinate about technologies and patent directions, it can hallucinate about laws, case differences. It actually makes up cases and tells you that some case was filed and it wasn't. You asked for the source. One of the people that actually know a lot about AI is you should ask it for at least two or three sources before it gives you the information, meaning I want the links to the websites or the pages you use to make that decision. You get far less and far less really crazy stuff if you ask that. It'll take far longer, but this is what professionals do today. So another thing is that the AI lacks what examiners think of and how they do their job. So is my invention patentable? Without putting the corpus of information of the MPEP in there, the manual for patent and examination procedures. I mean, you're flying blind. Another area for caveats is it ignores the inventor's intent. These large language models can generate claims broader than the inventor ever even thought, or claims that are different. And now the potential inventor sitting there doesn't understand claims and thinks this is the result it needs. Another caveat is AI can fabricate the prior art and the novelty totally. It could say, "Oh yeah, there's an area here that's very novel." How does it know that? We have found these things to be categorically wrong. So there's a lot of caveats here. A couple more. AI doesn't really ask clarifying questions. So because of that, the LLMs just jump over into claim drafting without asking any clarifying questions. Like, tell me more about how you'd like to enable this. Tell me more about, do you have any data about this? Tell me, do you want to connect the electronics to a sensor to memory to make decisions with algorithms versus would you just like me to make up something that may not work? So without asking clarifying questions, this thing gets off on a totally different track. Finally, another caveat is that these LLMs tend to treat things without understanding the depth of the technology. So they can treat a very incremental engineering tweak as being patentable. So you want to make a small modification as to the patentable. So, oh yeah. So am I saying not to use these chat engines to ask questions for your AI, your IP issues? No. I'm telling you, you should be really suspect of the results. Making business decisions and spending money based upon this. The AIs don't practice law. They don't practice medicine. So these things work really powerfully well when you're an expert because some of the drudgery gets taken out of it. So when I write a prompt of an AI, I know what I have a huge corpus of information. I give it before any question I give the AI. So having experts help you with the AI probably is a great way to get through this next step of AI. So let's move on to the last two topics, topic 5 and 6. So coming up, we're going to dig into how the AI landscape plugs directly into real business systems, from CRM to revenue generation, monetization packages. So there's a lot you can do. You can connect it to your laboratory. And I'm doing that this week. I'm going to travel on the plane, and I'm making a virtual lab in an AI space so I can experiment. And I can attach my IP landscape to that. But also, we're going to talk about the future. This is the scary part. This is where general intelligence, which means that it now can reason better than a human, is going to happen in the next, 6 months? What does that mean to the AI IP landscape? Now, I don't even want to talk about super general intelligence, where it may happen in a year or two, the great singularity of Kurzweil, that basically says that now the sum of all human beings, you can add up all that knowledge and all that decision making, and the AI is now better than that. The sum of all knowledge, the sum of all human beings' rational thinking. So I don't want to talk about super general intelligence. I don't want to talk about super intelligence. I just want to talk about AGI and how that maps into the future. It's so hard to predict, and we'll talk about why that is. So stay tuned. So let's go to topic number five, the AI landscape, IP landscape, and its interconnection to other tools. Now, I got pretty excited in the first four topics, I got to admit. I wasn't using the caveats as something I wanted everyone to think that that's sort of a sales pitch to hire experts. It isn't. I'm just generally concerned because I've seen how many mistakes I've made when I've used it on things that I don't know, and keep asking myself the question, that I have to be better as a professional to make sure that I'm using these tools as the best I can, but not believing them, and be skeptical. But then comes the next part, which is now our AI-based IP landscape. And by that's the general term of saying I'm doing IP landscapes, which is the study of patents to answer business questions. I'm using AI to do that, AI to do research, AI to help me write prompts, AI to produce very cool outputs, AI to provide insights, AI to analyze stuff. I mean, all that stuff, having AI to do that. And I'm not just saying you're hooking a chat GPT to the patent system. I'm talking about truly agentic AI. We already have hundreds of tools programmed in to the AI to go to the patent literature to find out things. But now we have the ability to connect it to other tools. So what do I mean? Well, sort of like integrating the IP landscape into product roadmaps. Isn't that cool? So you can have a bunch of product roadmap tools, StageGate or whatever. You can you can basically put that tool and connect it to the AI IP landscape. So just imagine you have kind of a smart inhaler you're building, right? And you have a roadmap for that. You run it through the AI IP landscape and it flags the rivals that are developing stuff that overlaps with the claims. So your team developing the roadmap actually sees this and basically modifies the hardware direction before you locked it in because you're seeing the rivals are moving there. So as you're developing your future roadmap, you can do the AI IP landscape to figure out is there concerns from a rival standpoint. There's another area where you can try to figure out how to create revenue with patents. Happens all the time. And by the way, because now the new patent commissioner, John Squires, who's a friend of ours, basically he is now not allowing all the IPRs to go through and not allowing the patent committee to do that. So now a lot more patents going to be issued and IPRs are going to be harder to do, meaning that now patents will be more valuable because, the lawsuits can't be stopped before they start. So there's a lot of work there, but now what's happening is that this sort of ability to generate more revenue with IP is certainly going to happen. So as of last week, IP just became much more valuable. But now consider, connecting that to other processes like monetization. So you can have, for instance, you can have your AI landscape connected to your CRM system, which tells you about, or the monetization systems, I mean, to show you where you can make money. So maybe your AI shows you that 3 to 12 patents cover some best-selling product direction. So it may pop up and do evaluation for you and help you determine whether or not you should start monetization. So connecting the AI landscape to money-making processes is a great way to sort of think about getting even more value out of the AI-based IP landscape. A third area is sort of R&D, that basically it could trip off directions. So supposing your inventors and your R&D guys have electronic notebooks for their laboratory, and all of a sudden you're developing some new sensor geometry, and the engineer puts the information in, and all of a sudden you recognize that Bosch filed a patent on that 6 months ago. So now you have a real-time companion helping you make decisions on the product roadmap and on the R&D roadmap. Matter of fact, the AI could tell you where to do R&D, the opposite. How about processes like, looking at how you can help investors sort of understand the value of your portfolio? So you could literally have the claims of your patents be analyzed against different markets and do some valuation and show that connection. So investors could say, I really need to understand how your claims are going to bring value to the company. So now with your AI landscape, with sort of valuation tools, you can connect those two. Another thing is sort of messaging. So you could feed your patent data tool into your marketing tool. And so you want to produce a new slide deck for marketing. It reads your patents, it reads the landscape of patents, and makes charts and graphs for you to show how you're very different. And you interact with that IP landscape tool, with your marketing tool, to get a better sales pitch. Imagine if you connect this to sort of board level information. I mean, I've started 4 or 5 companies, had multiple boards. I'm on a lot of boards, or was on a number of boards, as chairman of boards, and the boards always want to get information about what's going on. It's always hard to get information for that next board meeting or that quick board meeting. But now with an IP landscape connected to your CFO or your CEO, you can now have reasonable outputs of IP directions for some board level meeting. So you find out that there's some new patents in some high growth areas by your main competitor, and it happened 2 weeks ago, and it's so material you want to get it to the board. So now the CEO is thinking that way. So thinking about connecting that process, board level processes to the IP landscape, absolutely. Think about using it to guide licensing. So you have a system that kind of finds out that you have IP that's more licensable than others. You decide you want to start a licensing program. You then ask the AI where licensing can occur the best. It identifies 4 or 5 small Japanese companies that have been noted to take licenses. And we understand the geopolitical kind of nature of what companies and what cultures like to license and which don't. So all of a sudden you have a whole licensing program set up in a direction, and that's after the first cup of coffee. You can do AI IP landscapes connected to other tools like, academic collaboration. So you could kind of say, I want to do some sort of tech scouting. What are the best universities to do something? Well, now you can actually use that same question, but say, oh, by the way, use the patent literature as a guide to find out where they're issuing patents. By the way, working with universities that have patents may be good. It may not be good because universities really require a strong connection to get value back in their patents. So you may decide, I want a university that doesn't have patents to work with. All that's just within a prompt. Another thing is tools to connect to is like market correlations. So a lot of marketers like to forecast the next 5 years of revenue and generation. Now you connect the AI IP landscape to it to detect directions. So for instance, so the AI detects UV sterilization in a lot of patent filings for hygiene in a particular market, and that allows you as the marketer to say, this is a valuable direction. We thought it was just a starting direction, but it really is valuable direction, so we're going to double down on that direction. And then finally, here's another one that the patent expiration rates and when a patent goes off patent, it's a major thing. So in the drug industries, people just sit on the sidelines waiting for a generic drug or waiting for a drug to go off patent so they can create a generic drug. But now the AI can be looking at expired patents and tell you when market opportunities are about to happen. Did you know that in the next 18 months, this is going off patent? Therefore, this product direction is open to you? That's huge. By the way, I could do a whole podcast on this ability to interconnect the AI IP landscape to other processes. Truly amazing. But now let's go into some frightening territory or some great optimistic territory. As of this date, in this podcast with myself as an expert in IP, I haven't done all sorts of podcasts over a number of years. I'm here to tell you I really don't know the direction of where AI is going to head, but even more importantly, where it's going to head for the AI IP landscape. And it's just imaginable. It's just only unimaginable. So let me give you a short story quickly, and to tell you about how you can imagine the future. So I was reminded by a colleague the other day. He called me up and reminded me that IP Capital every year would have a thought leadership conference in Vermont, and we'd invite our 60, 80 clients, and they'd come and have a great time, a couple days. We would have speakers. I would kick it off and I would close it off. But we'd have speakers talk about all the current topics. And, many times we had a lot of the new things going on in IP conference, and, we were always kind of hopefully be first about some topic. Because we work with lots of clients, big and small. We work for Fortune 500 companies, 15% of them, thousands of startups. So a big purview of what's going on. But we also are tech agnostic, so we deal with thousands of companies, but hundreds of technologies. So just as a short background, one day I decided, I'm looking for something to talk about. And it's about 60 years ago, and I decided that Alexa was a great app And then I had just read that Alexa had skills. So I thought about this and I read up on what Alexa's skills were, that you could literally program Alexa to do something for you. And you gave it a skill name and you gave it a trip word. So I thought, is it possible for me to create like an Alexa app that invents? So I hired some programmers and worked for about a month or two and developed what I called Edison. And at the end of the conference, I had an Alexa pod, and I put it in the conference room for everybody to hear. And basically, I said, I've got a real treat for you because I'm projecting where AI is going to head. 6 or 7 years ago, I said that AI was going to be able to talk to you and it's going to be able to answer you and it's going to search big databases and patent databases and it's going to help you invent. And that's what I do for a living. I help inventors invent. So here we go. So I said, hey, Edison, I'd like to invent something. Edison came back and said, well, what would you like to invent? So I thought for a minute. I said, I want to invent a better shovel. So then Edison said, well, what parts of the shovel that you were talking about? So I said, the handle. So then Edison said, what did you want to do with the handle? I said, I don't know. What would you think? Well, I think maybe we should look at flashing handle or I think we should look at vibrating handle. What do you think? And then I said, flashing handles. I want to work on that. Well, what's the thought of flashing handles? And so I said, well, maybe the handle will flash. And then it occurred to me, maybe it'll flash when the handle is close to a power line. And then all of a sudden I'll know. It'll be a safe. Well, how would you do that? And so it asked me questions and I answered them. And then it said, okay. And the people that we had the email for that came to the conference that was sitting there, I said, check your phone. They checked their phone. And basically in their phone was a draft of a disclosure for the flashing handle, show, all enabled. People freaked out, basically. Now, there was some magic and smoke behind the mirrors, of course, but I didn't program it for flashing shovels. I just gave it leading questions to keep asking me. It would go into its little database and it would use that and not large language model, just regular AI, correlations and all that stuff. And basically, I was ready to create a disclosure. We had a structure to do that. We had our own kind of internal little AI doing that. That was 6 years ago. He reminded me of that. The reason why I bring this up is I was able to project that future based on known technology. I heard about Alexa apps and it worked. I had technology that working. Okay. I have just a little bit of information of how AI LLMs are working for us. I have no idea what's going to happen with AGI. It's so difficult to project a technology when you don't know how the technology even is going to instantiate itself. So the next Edison that I would create, I have no idea. AGI might create the next Edison without even telling me. So let's go into some of the things that are very futuristic here. Well, there could be autonomous patent portfolios, right? Like AGI designs the full patent family. It automatically predicts what the examiner is going to do. It then outputs the changes to that, and then it automatically takes, 2 or 3 patents, generates 42 enabled claims, and it produces a 90% predictability that'll be allowed. And it did that by just asking a simple question. Here's another one. Supposing AI generates the white space. Instead of detecting the gaps, AGI might invent the entire new market space, reverse engineer all the IP positions, declare that, for instance, carpets that never stain is what it wants to invent, and it creates a huge portfolio around that and creates a brand new market. And it just did it. But by the way, it did it almost as fast as I'm saying it could be done. Supposing the AI basically decides to look at corporate IP intent. So the AGI predicts patents of the rivals. So it tells you what they're going to be filing in the next year. So you use that as your new program. And so, but the AGI basically produces all the IP you're going to need over the next 3 or 4 months, just because it predicted. I mean, it predicted the rival going in a direction. So then it told you what to do. Now, this is kind of weird because wouldn't the rival use the same AGI, do the same thing? There's a lot of questions and answers. Another thing is that taking a look at, say, the patent lawyer with a crystal ball. Imagine the AGI dynamically rewriting claims based upon future legal challenges and producing that result as the final claim set. Imagine this futuristic API synthesizing prior art. I talked about this for about a decade and a half, but an enabled publication, well written, becomes prior art for anything. So maybe my rival is stuck because my AGI decides, why not write about 50 enabled publications and publish them so that my rival can't get patents? So use the patent system to stop somebody from patenting. Imagine if the AGI basically was to invent without the inventor, and the AGI detects the problem. It then writes the specs, creates the CAD, creates the model, runs the physics, does the simulation, validates the claims. It files patents. That's incredibly enabled based upon real data. And the human's not even involved. Imagine if the AGI could sort of get a patent war game. You remember that movie, The War Games, which ended at the end, by the way, by saying, "Would you like to play a game?" Imagine that the system kicks off looking at 50,000 competitive IP patents and then thinks about litigation scenarios and then decides which patents can be created and are going to be the most litigatable. And then basically it decides that three of the top 40 patents should be filed immediately because they're going to be litigation grade and it will start, being able to go against a rival. Why did you do that? Because your rival did something in the business and you said, we should get some patents on top of them and sue them if we ever get the chance. You just tell the AGI that, and it gives you that chance. Imagine if this autonomous idea can be for monetization. When the patent issues, all of a sudden, the tools come in place for the AI to run off and to have the patent be monetized. It does the marketing plan, it contacts the people, it creates the agreements, and it brings in the cash. You think that I'm talking about something that's crazy? I don't think it is. I think all these things are going to happen. We're proving it every single day. What about the future of AI landscaping for like, even creating a synthetic competitor? Imagine this. Imagine you just have money and you decide you want to create a business. You tell the AI, the AGI, to create an IP position in a new market, develop an LLC, and put all the IP in there. So all of a sudden, there's 140 patents in a particular area as a placeholder in the future direction, where your super AGI basically, created all that position. So all of a sudden, you have a company that wasn't worth anything that's now worth $200 million. Imagine if you have self-healing patent portfolios. Imagine if you build a portfolio and you tell the AGI, keep watching it and do what you need to do to keep it in force and to keep it current and to keep it valuable and notify me, if you're having a problem. All that's possible. Holy smokes. By the way, I could do 10 podcasts on this. Every one of these things I'm talking about is very possible. And it's very likely to start probably in 6 to 9 months with AGI. Is it scary or is it an opportunity? I'll leave that up to you because it's going to happen in more areas in the AI-based IP landscape. So let's wrap up. Topic number one, the new AI-IP landscape capability. I talked about the new capability of it, how you have prior art searches, general corpuses, corporate data corpuses, points of view of startups, points of view of investors, understanding policy, all that sorts of stuff. Yes, the AI IP landscape is here to stay. It has rich context, lots of corpuses, can do lots of things. In topic number two, I sort of took a different direction here, which is what about just focusing the IP landscape on competitors? Let's imagine what it could do. Man, it could do all sorts of stuff. It could outmaneuver the strategy of your competitor by telling you what it is. It could talk about inventor migration, claim types changes, using citation index to predict directions. It can use prosecution speed to tell you about what's going on, or abandon rates, the opposite. They can give a history of ordering the patents in the story about what's going on with the patent system in a short story. Maybe it's readable to children. It can analyze the pair, which things couldn't do before, and tell you what the examiners are doing with your rivals. And it can also tell you anything about patents, like, are your patents paper patenting and are they good or not? In topic number three, we talked about how to detect areas to invent, sort of the white space. And this is really cool because we talked about a lot of different areas. Like we talked about the private eye, where there's, a lot of dense patents, but they can find places in the dense patents to file. Talked about backward citations and top inventor boosting, and talked about evaluating enablement within a patent to see how good it is, and then using that for your own R&D or to use it as a way to, build on somebody else's patents. We talked about looking at heat maps, the cross sections of technology, and is there, a cross somewhere that is very novel as an opportunity? We talked about even rejected patents gives you the area of novelty. We talked about inviting the AI IP landscape into a brainstorming session. And we talked about how you can use it to go backwards looking at provisionals and how well they're connected to the patents at issue. We even talked about, competitor watch lists, from that simple alert that my competitor has a patent to my competitor has a patent, giving me a data dump and all the things to worry about and all the opportunities thereof. Pretty amazing stuff. We talked about in topic number four, caveats. And I won't repeat them here, but I talked about this hallucination The first level errors, even if the prompts that you give it are going to determine the answer you get, and the answers you get are based upon not having the knowledge about what true value quality is. We talked about the AI hallucinating laws and cases and prior art. All that's really true, and misunderstanding the inventor intent to take in a direction that wasn't yours. It doesn't know anything about examiners, but it tells you what the examiner is going to be thinking. You don't ask it clarifying questions, so it drafts and creates things and so on. It misinterprets technology depth. It thinks that incremental things are really novel because it's a sycophant. I mean, that's what the industry calls these things today. So there's a lot of caveats. And topic number four, if you listen to that again, I think you'd kind of agree the more that you use it in your own domain, that's really true. In topic number five, we talked about how to connect this to other tools. So to think about that, you can connect this AI IP landscape to your roadmaps, to your technology development, to the investors, to the IP group, of course, but to the board, to licensing, to find collaborations, to find universities, to find markets. We talked about how even patent expiration be a great opportunity. So you can connect this to any business process you've got, and therefore that business process will get better by connecting the AI IP landscape to it. And finally, we just talked about and ended with sort of the future here. I talked about my little Edison story about it's hard to predict the future. I've been trying to do that in this space for a long time. I am telling you, I can't predict that future now. And I always felt that I always could. That should tell you something. We talked about how the portfolio could be autonomously created. We talked about how it could generate white spaces and then fill the white spaces. We talked about how it could, figure out the intent of a direction of a portfolio and get in front of it. We talked about the patent way with a crystal ball that it rewrites claims based upon it understanding what it thinks the examiner is going to say. Synthetic prior art can be produced for enabled publication, stopping an industry. We talked about inventors inventing without an invention happening without an inventor. We talked about the patent war game. That's really cool. Would you like to play a nice game of chess? We talked about autonomous IP monetization bots. The patent gets issued, it's a sentient being that becomes alive, and this AGI goes off and tries to find money for it, giving that patent a chance in the small world of patents. And we talked about, synthetic competitors that just with some money you can create a business, and you just ask it to, and it does. It even creates the LLC. And we even talked about self-healing portfolios. Wouldn't that be great to build your first portfolio and not have to worry about it anymore? And these are just 10 of thousands of possibilities of the AGI using the patent system. And that's just a small piece of all the things that AGI is going to do for everything, for marketing, for developing products, for accounting, for art, for music. This is headed in a place that is so difficult to predict. Anyway, in order to make your day, I wanted to thank you for listening in. I would love to get whether you like this or not, give us a thumbs up. Have any questions, certainly you can contact us. But I think this is going to be an amazing opportunity. I'm an optimist, so I look at this as an amazing opportunity, not only for what I do as a living, but the ability to now bring intellectual property and the AI-based IP landscapes into business sectors to help us make better decisions, sounder decisions, better discoveries. So have a great day. John Cronin, Invent Anything.